Hey, welcome back to the video. So, it's been no time for you, but for me it's been 2 weeks. As you can see here, I'm a little bit more broken than I was 2 weeks ago. I've had to have my clavicle reconstructed and my thumb reconstructed from a bike race down at the Goodwood circuit on the day that I was painting this last. So, it's been a while, but we're back, we're ready to roll. And what I've got next is I've got to apply the decals. I'm going to try and match it to the original job as much as possible, and then I'm going to crack on from there. When applying these decals, the main ones here that you see on the side, they were actually window stickers, so they were a bit of a faff to do. If you can, or you can get them custom cut for normal decals for bikes, I would recommend going that route, but this is the way that I went and I didn't like it as much as it wasn't sticking to the frame as well. There we go, the decals are officially on. I gotta say, it was more of a nightmare job than I thought it was going to be. There's a few spots where it looks a bit more bodged, shall we say, but hopefully when the final paint goes on, I peel them off, it doesn't show up too much. So let's get to the fun bit, let's get the silver on, and we'll go from there. The silver actually went on really smoothly, it was quite easy. The only thing I would recommend would be to do more like 1.5, maybe 2 layers, and use a bit more of the spray can that you've got. I didn't quite use enough, so on the final job there's just some very light areas where the purple's showing through just a tiny bit, but only I would really know where they are, so I would recommend 2 layers. That is the bike sprayed silver now, so there's certain areas that went well, certain areas that didn't. You can kind of see underneath where I didn't smooth out enough on the base layer. That's coming through, unfortunately. Also, there's certain areas where I sprayed on a bit too thick, so I'm going to have to smooth over with a bit of sandpaper before I put the clear coat on. But all in all, it looks fairly good, just need to let it dry. Then I need to take the decals off, and then hopefully on the bits where I didn't do a great job applying the decals, it hasn't punished me too much. We'll find out when I look at it. From here, I very quickly did another rub down with the greaseproof paper just to harden up the paint quite a lot, and then it was a case of taking the decals off the bike. So you just grab the edge of a knife and just peel it off from one corner. It's super easy and comes off well. The next step here is complete, so I've managed to pull it all off, and as a whole I think it looks really good actually. It's not perfect, I don't mind admitting that, but all in all it turned out pretty damn good. I think here, because the Spray.bike stuff is so dry and powdery, when there is a little lift in the decals, it doesn't really go under it too much, so it doesn't punish you from there. Here you should be able to see a bit more of a close-up, so there's just a few rough edges, but 95% of it is actually really good, really sharp, clean edges. And from here, I could just get going with a clear coat. And for the first layer of clear coat, I used the Spray.bike stuff because it wasn't as strong and I just wanted to get an extra layer on there. Next update here, so what I've done, I've finished sanding down the carbon fork here, and now that it's sanded down, I've also sprayed a layer of carbon primer on there, so the lacquer is ready to go on after it has a quick sand. And then finally, I also sanded down and re-lacquered or re-clear coated the seat post here. So I just gave it a light sand down so that way I could keep all the logos in there on the side, the Bontrager logo and stuff, but it's actually made it look a lot smoother, a lot shinier, so I think I'll just give it another light sand down and a buff after 24 hours. Find any string line around the house to hang it up on there, so I'm just going to sketchily hold it with my broken hand, my broken fingers, and just give it a spray. This part will probably be a lot easier for you than it was for me. After this, I started to get sanding down the first layer of clear coat, the Spray.bike layer, and just take away any of the drips and stuff that I had. I would recommend using a block, so sandpaper wrapped around the block, just to get rid of those lumpier bits that stick out or that have run a little bit. That's what I didn't do here, and I found myself burning through the clear coat really easily. So be careful of that. Use very fine, light brushes because you burn through quickly. I've given everything a sand down. I can now go for the second clear coat, and the one that I'm going to be using is this Spray Max 2K stuff, just because I know it's going to be a lot harder to finish at the end of it. So I've put the bottom cap in there, I've connected the two components, given it a shake, and I'm going to do the fork first, and I'm going to finish off on the bike here. There are some messy patches from where I've sanded, so hopefully this kind of just covers them up. I actually preferred to apply this 2K stuff. It went on a bit easier. I could do lighter layers, I found, that looked a lot better, so I preferred using this for the final finish. In between each layer I waited 20 minutes, so you can just have an ice cream like I did in between each layer whilst you wait for it to dry up a little bit. Here it is right here. It just needs one more coat and then it will be done. It's actually not looking bad at all. I'm pretty chuffed with it, all in all. There are some areas that haven't gone well where I was sanding out some dribbles here. You can see there's one left that hopefully the buff will get out. And actually I went a bit too deep on that area and didn't notice before I started putting more clear coat on. So that's my bad. But all in all, it's generally pretty good, including the forks as well. So I've got the little Trek logos in there. I've got this up here. But yeah, the forks have turned out well as well. These went back down to raw carbon. And yeah, they look nice. They look a lot better now, a lot smoother. And the seat post over here has also got a bit more clear coat on it, and that should just buff out nicely as well when it's hardened eventually. But yeah, no more cracks, no more yellow bits on here. It looks pretty good. So all in all, we're not looking too bad at the moment. I'm going to use my seat post as a test piece now because I've got some rubbing compound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet sand with 2000 grit, then 3000 grit. And then after I've done that, I'm going to apply some rubbing compound. And I've got this drill with a pad on it here. And hopefully buff it out, and hopefully it'll be super smooth after that. I actually really regret doing this bit, only 1 week out of surgery, because my shoulder was no way near strong enough to hold the drill here, because it was actually more grippy than I thought it was going to be. So you'll probably find it easier, you'll probably have full strength, but for me it was pretty tough. But I must say, the rubbing compound actually did a really good job on these bits. I'm glad I used the seat post as a test patch, because then it gave me more confidence for the rest of the stuff that I was doing. The fork was also really hard for me to do with the rubbing compound because it was still grippy. You'll see here where it grabs on and it more pulls the drill around and my arm around rather than rubbing the area that you want it to rub. But as a whole, it still worked out really well. So if you want the finishing touches, you should do this too. In the end, I was too lazy to go get some polishing compound to go do the same job, and I'm still really happy with the job. So I just left it without the polishing compound, but I reckon it will just give it that extra 1% to make it look better. In terms of time spent on each area, you can apply lots of pressure and hopefully just try and keep it in the same spot as you run over it smoothly. I didn't spend too long. It's actually more intuitive than you think it is to do this bit. You'll see when it's had enough, you'll know if it's warming up or not, and just go with your gut a little bit. I'm actually pretty happy with the rubbing compound. Generally speaking, there's no more like orange peel left in there. It's a hell of a lot smoother. The lines are a lot cleaner. If you shine a light on it, they're a lot sharper. So I think that's actually worked out quite well. I'll just get the polish to finish it off later, and we'll get the frame going. Doing the other two areas first actually gave me a lot more confidence with the frame, so I could just really go for it here. I do actually regret not getting a better before picture of the seat post and the forks because they genuinely looked rubbish. There were yellowing on the edges where there were dents and cuts down to the carbon, so they were made to look a lot better just by clear coating again. This is it, we're right towards the end of it now. So after the rubbing compound, I was going to polish it, but it actually kind of looks good enough, so I've just gone ahead and put a layer of wax, a carbon wax on the top of here, let it dry to a haze and then wiped it off, and I've done the same with my seat post, and all I have to do is do it to the actual bike frame now as well. Then it's done, it's just a job of building the bike back up. The carnauba wax just gives it that extra layer of protection and also just hardens it up a little bit more so it protects the actual paintwork itself. It's really easy to apply, just follow the instructions on whichever one that you buy. And then from here, it was just all about lots of little finishing details. So basically just taping the brake cables back in place. After the brake cables, it was about putting the head badge back in place in the right spot. This took a few goes. From here, I could also decide on protecting the frame a bit more with some frame protectors, and then deciding where I want to put my mini pump and my bottle cage. This took a few goes as well, but it all went back together pretty easy after this. Even including building the bike back up, it was just normal. I would recommend having this chainstay protector on pretty early as well, because the chain will punch through your paint pretty quickly early on. Initially, on the edges of the Trek logo here, they were quite sharp and they came up quite high, but the grease-proof paper running over the top really flattened it out, and now if you touch it, it's nice and smooth over this area. So this is it here, my final product. You can see it outside a little bit better, all the details. The 5000 logo turned out pretty well there, and so did this side especially. This side's slightly better than the other side, the decals went on better. I've got all my extras on there, my pump and stuff, still no handlebar tape, but that's ready to roll. And then, like I said, the carbon looks really good. I wish I got a before shot of it, because then you would have actually been able to see just how dented and chipped it was, but it actually looks really good now. I think that looks much better. Then the rest of it is just built back up. This looks really good as well, so if I come to the other side, it's already been scratched, unfortunately. Just here, if I can get it on camera, you can't really see it, but just right by the N, T and the R, it started to scratch up a bit more, but that's what the whole seat post looks like. But now it's just nice, shiny, glossy carbon, and then yeah, the rest of it's good. If I can find any imperfections, I will show you. But actually, even with the imperfect decals, it turned out quite well. And yeah, the other side turned out good here too.